Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, before I begin this lesson, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem HaKodash. The honors go out to the apostles, elders, great millstone, rule and teach well. Shalom, wa barakiam to you brothers and sisters out there. Alright, this is Brother Malachi from the Great Millstone Nashville Camp. And Lord, when this lesson is edifying to the hopeful elect. Alright, topic I wanted to get into, really inspired by watch some of this ISUPK clip, and which they're not wrong saying, you are what your father is, but you can clearly tell that group, along with majority of the so-called Black Hebrew Israelite movement, which it's not a movement in the sense of what they're saying, and it's not just a black only thing. All right, that's a really derogatory term that they try to umbrella us all under. But you are what your father is only goes so far. All right, now when you bring out Numbers 1:18, let me go ahead and grab it. I'm gonna get scriptures as I can. This is Numbers chapter 1, verse 18. And they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families by the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upward by their polls. So, you are what your father is an accurate statement, yes. Right, what your mother is doesn't determine your nationality, doesn't determine your race. Okay, but we understand that this is not, the end all be all. You can't just say, well, what's your father? Well, my father's Japanese. Oh, so you're an Ammonite. Now, you can't just immediately label somebody a certain nation just because of their current father. All right, because of their father who, whose lineage goes back thousands upon thousands of years. So you are what your father is. It's a strong indicator. If your dad's so-called black, if your dad's so-called white, if your dad's Asian, your dad, it points in the direction. Just like how the 12 tribes son. Oh, well, I'm Puerto Rican. I must be from the tribe of Ephraim. Well, that's not always the case. All right, now can we say majority of the time? Yeah. Majority of the time we can base it off these things. That's a high indicator. But to say you are what your father is, like Bob Marley, because they brought up that, in other camps have brought that up before. Oh, well, Bob Marley, his dad is so-called white, so he's an Edomite. No. No. It's not how that works, bro. Okay? Because once again, thousands upon thousands of years is what we're talking about, lineage. Okay? Yahushua died roughly 2,000 years ago. How much further back than that is the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? And that's what determines if you're an Israelite, if your father's lineage goes back to one of the 12 tribes. We don't have any of these records. We don't have our lineage, in our back pocket. We don't have it at all. Okay? And don't put your trust in some fallacy-ass site like Ancestry, DNA, and all that BS, Because even that doesn't trace your roots, right? That's just more sort of recent ethnicities. But then you look at that even, talk about countries. It's not accurate. Okay, this is like it says in Romans 8 and verse 16. This is a spiritual thing, bro. All right, this is a spiritual thing. Let me go and get that. Romans. It's one of the go-tos right here. Romans chapter 8, verse 16. The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. So, this is all a spiritual thing. All right? Obviously, lineage matters, because without the lineage, you're not Israelite. But we don't know the lineage. Okay, we're ignorant in these things. We don't have the records once again. So what do we go off of? We go off of the spirit. You know, you can't say, oh well, his dad's so-called Chinese. He must be a Moabite. No, it doesn't always work like that, right? Our people have been scattered, and our people have been mingling amongst the other nations. Whether you other Israelite camps want to acknowledge that or accept that or not, you know, yes, it's a token of shame that Israelites look like other nations, as myself does. Okay, it's a token of shame, but it's still part of our history. It's still part of reality. It's still part of where we're at today. All right, in the year 2026, they got a whole book called Nature Knows No Color Line, which goes into how Esau and Jacob were mingling all throughout European history. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that you'll have a so-called white man or woman that could actually be an Israelite. It shouldn't come as a surprise that you can have a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American individual that's actually a Edomite or another heathen nation. These things shouldn't come as a surprise to you. All right, because did not Yahushua even speak about the wheat and the tares? So what is a tare, man? What is that talking about? It's talking about somebody that looks like a stereotypical Israelite, you know, mainly so-called Negro, but their lineage goes back to one of the other nations. That's the breakdown of that. There's no tap dancing around that. That is reality. Okay, and our people need to deal with reality, man. And stop lying to yourself. Stop making this strictly so-called. This is not the new Black Panther Party, man. First of all, that's already a thing, but this is not that. Right? We're not in the space to be carnal minded. And matter of fact, you want to talk about Esau? That's a trait of an Edomite, carnality. All right, we're supposed to be spiritual. We're supposed to be tapped in. Right? We're not supposed to be basing everything upon what our fleshly eyeballs can see. Let me get this real quick as well. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. Okay, so the natural man cannot receive the things of the Spirit of God. Okay? This is one of those things. Understanding that Israelites will come looking like other nations. This is not something that a normal individual can understand. Okay? Matter of fact, let me get this. I know it's in Sirach. I just forget where. Oh my goodness. Salakia, bear with me. Alright, here we go. Now we're getting to it. Sirach chapter 39, verse 24. It says, as his ways are plain unto the holy, so are they stumbling blocks unto the wicked. Okay, his ways are plain unto the holy. Right? The ways of Yahweh by Shemel Shai are plain unto the holy, but to the wicked, they're stumbling blocks. Okay? That's a telltale sign right there in the spirit to know who is and who isn't an Israelite. All right, well, not even who isn't, because we understand that majority of our people are not going to understand this knowledge. That doesn't make them a heathen nation. Right? They're likened onto the heathen nations, but they're still Israelites, but they're just, they're just rebellious. All right, they're just what's the term I'm thinking of here? They're just in a Gentile state of mind, right? They're unnatural Gentiles, okay? They're not literally heathens, but they're likened onto the heathen nations because of their mentality, okay? But if somebody comes into this knowledge and they believe on Yahweh by Shemel Shai, they pray, they fast, they're doing the work even, especially then, it's like, that got to be an Israelite, man. Only the Israelites will cleave onto Yahweh by Shemel Shai and return onto the gospel. Okay? You get a quick one to prove that. And there's numerous places we could go with this, but we're just going to, Lord wants to just drive the point home. We're going to close it up. We don't need to get a million scriptures. Okay? And I'm not saying that to neglect, the scriptures or to downplay brothers that get it, but no, that's not. Come on, it's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I can go through different accounts, and I can get, King Rehoboam's son, Moses' sons, and there's a lot of different ways we can go about this topic, but it's already becoming very plain. right? That it's not like the Lord said, I don't see as man seeth. I look on the inward man. Okay? Scriptures also say judge righteous judgment. Don't judge according to appearance. So this is not about how you look. You know, because even in that video of the ISUBK, they said this is not about complexion. All right, you're right. It's not about complexion. All right, but that's the thing. Why are you allowed to have Latinos and so-called Negro members that are essentially pale skinned, but then it's just completely an anomaly, I believe is the word. Let me look that up. Anomaly. An anomaly is a deviation from the normal, expected, or standard pattern, often defined as... Yeah, so why is it such an anomaly that we can have so-called white passing Negroes and have Latinos that have straight hair and they're pale skin, all that, but because he speaks Spanish and came from a certain island or a certain country that he's just Israelite, but you know, we can't have an Asian man or so-called white man or so-called East Indian or anything like that. They're just automatically disqualified. That doesn't make sense. When can you draw the line? You can't just up and decide when and where you draw the line on who can and can't be an Israelite, man. You're not in the space to do that. Okay? You're not. You know, black-only Israelites are through. They're finished, which ISUBK is not a black-only group. But I'm saying they're definitely through, the black-only Israelites. But then for you camps, you know, you have brothers in your camp. They might have a so-called white mother or they might be very fair complected. So what about them? So you mean to tell me you can't have an Asian man that has a black great-grandfather? And you would have no evidence of that? Looking at him, he doesn't even know because he disconnected from his family, Salakia. Like, these things happen more than you think. It is once again 2026. Okay? Israelites have been roaming the world for 5,000 fucking years, bro. More than that, you know? And you mean to tell me it's just such a baffling thing that Israelites can look like other nations? You know? That's why I'm saying you are with your fathers. That only goes so far. Because your father could look completely different from how your family did 1,000 years ago. 500 years ago. Okay? There's jakes out here, you know, that don't know what heathen nations they've mingled with, you know, over the past few thousand years. Okay, you got a so-called Negro out here somewhere, probably. His dad is dark as tar, you know. His dad got all, you know, the biggest afro in the room, but he could still go back to a slave master, be a product of grape, you know, in the 1600s. You don't know these things, okay? That's why we got to judge the spirit by the spirit. Okay, so Lord, when that this lesson was edifying, before I close, I want to say, call hello, Yahweh Bashim Al Shai Bashim Rakha Kodash. The honors the apostle, that was a great millstone. Shalom.